Alrighty, everyone. So I am so excited for today's conversation. Our guest is a birth worker who's dedicated to changing how we support women through pregnancy and postpartum. She's the founder of Root and Rise Perinatal Health, and she's deeply focused on the mental health and whole person care for moms. So today's conversation is a conversation I think every woman needs to hear. And so I wanted to welcome Rove to the show today.
Yeah, hi. Nice to be here. I'm excited.
So again, and we kind of talked a little bit off camera. I do apologize. I'm a little bit sick. So I might be coughing and sneezing throughout this entire recording, but I will do
Pages
my
on air,
best.
so we're good.
Yes. So I always like to start off each episode with a couple rapid fire icebreakers, just something to
Yeah.
kind of get to know you outside of all of the heavy conversations we're going to be talking today.
Okay.
So,
Let's
what's something that you're secretly good at?
secretly good at. I guess not a lot of people know, but I'm a really good swimmer. So I grew up swimming and swam in college. So it's kind of like a hidden talent these days. So yeah, if you want to race in the pool this summer, I'm your gal.
Okay, now I know. So that makes a little bit of sense because off camera, before we started recording, we started talking about our love for the water. So that
Yes.
gives me a little bit of
Water. Yeah.
background. Okay, I
Yeah.
totally
Love it.
get it. My best friend growing up, she was a swimmer. So I kind of know the swimmer life and I used to
Well, I
always
had
be
my kids
poolside.
in water too. I love water so much. I had my kids in water. Just my
Of
favorite place
course.
to be. So
Yeah, of course. That's so awesome. That's amazing. Okay. So now what's something that you're secretly bad at?
I am really bad with Excel sheets and math. So at any point, if someone wants me like mental math, literally use my calculator for 87 plus 31 the other day.
Yeah.
So it's not my forte. I can fake it till I make it. We all have calculators in our pockets, but I'm not your gal for any quick equations or figuring out a sum on an Excel sheet. Not my
Me
world.
me either. I'm dyslexic. So for me, once too many numbers get involved, I'm like, "Ugh, this is
Yeah.
like word
My
soup, you
husband would
know?
tell you I'm secretly bad at vacuuming also. I apparently don't do it well enough. So that's been a lifelong journey on
It's
learning how to
okay. That could be his job then.
it has become that. But yeah,
Yeah,
math and vacuuming, not my forte.
that's hilarious. Math is hard. I can't blame you. Vacuuming for me is so therapeutic, but I have a dog. So she sheds so
Um,
much. So I can tell, like, if I'm not doing a good job, like I see the little hairs, the little fur balls. They don't lie. But so for me, I really enjoy vacuuming. It's kind of like a weird little therapeutic moment that I have.
there we go.
Yeah. So what's the last thing that really made you laugh?
Well, besides for this conversation, I think the last thing that made me laugh would have probably been my 6-year-old came in the other morning at 5:02 a.m. to let us know that he lost his tooth. He's like bleeding from his gum and was making sure the tooth fairy since it was dark. And it was just one of those most like innocent moments as a parent. We're like, no, no, this is not coming. Please get a paper towel and go back to bed. But his little face at 5:02 a.m. was just too cute and definitely brought a chuckle to me the other morning.
That's so great. That's a beautiful way to start the day. So did
Yeah,
he take it out himself or it just came out naturally?
I guess in the middle of the night. I don't know.
My
We didn't
God,
get
that's
the story,
hilarious.
but
I
yeah.
always want, so my first tooth, I did the whole like tie it on a string and then somebody pulled it. And it was very
No,
traumatic. Don't recommend it to the listeners. But so
no,
I
thank you.
always, yeah. So I always think of kids losing their first tooth. And I'm like, was it as traumatic as mine? Or was it just like it fell off in his sleep? Like I
I
had like
think it's
a
less
gang
traumatic.
of cousins around me, like, pull, pull. Terrible.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So what are you currently obsessed with?
I think I am oh, that's a good question. Currently obsessed with, well, so running right now. I decided to run a trail race. So by nature, I'm obsessed with it because now I have to do it a lot. And then, like, if there was a trend that I'm obsessed with, I bought one of those jiggle boards and I'm pretty obsessed with standing on it for 10
Oh,
minutes
I know what you're talking about.
to
I know what
clear
you're
out my
talking
low
about.
fat system.
Yeah, do you feel any
Instagram
better?
I do. I don't think it's gonna get rid of my cellulite despite the Instagram ads, but I do feel like it releases your, like, lymphatic system. I put my kids on it if they're super, like, heightened, like, just go stand there for 10 minutes and,
That's
like,
a mom
jiggle
hack.
all your feelings out. So I'd say that's my current new obsession, is
I
standing on this board and jiggling for 10 minutes a day.
I've seen it, but I didn't know if it was a fad or not. So I was like, let me not like be
Yeah.
too impulsive because some of them are kind of pricey. So I was like, let me not be too impulsive.
This
But I
was on sale with an Instagram code. I made some influencers some money, I'm sure. It was like a 2 a.m. purchase, but here we are. So
Those are the best purchases. Those are the ones that you realize you never needed, but once they arrive, you're
yeah,
like, "My god, thank god I was scrolling at 2 AM."
it's a hazard of birth work when I'm
Yeah,
up at like 2 or 3 a.m. and see things and then it shows up and I'm like, I forgot I bought this.
yeah. That's so funny, but that's so true. You're up at pretty late hours. So, kinda getting into your story now that we're
Yeah.
talking about how you are a birth worker. I'm kind of
Yeah.
obsessed with your story and everything that you've done for moms in general because I don't feel like we see it enough. At least in the city that I'm at, we don't have anything that really resembles what you've created with Root and
Yeah.
Rise. So I really want to pick your brain about it, but I want to get into kind of your story. And so I want to ask you what really led you into getting into birth work
Yeah.
and into perinatal mental health?
Yeah. Good question. So, birth work in general. So, I'm the oldest of five. My mom was a childbirth educator and helped people have babies. So, I just grew up thinking birth was this normal process that you did and you did it in community. And actually went to school to be pre-med and the math came into play. Didn't go into medical
Math
school.
wasn't mathin'.
Yeah, no, ended up doing business for 14 years during COVID. The company I worked for, we had a downsize. We worked in fundraising. It was not a great time to be in schools. And one day my husband was like, "Hey, if your job like doesn't come back in the sense of like I was helping trying to save this company, which it did come back, but in that moment, he's like, if you had to do something else, what would you do?" I was like, "I think I just want to help people have babies." I was at the end of my birthing journey personally, and as friends were having babies, they'd be like, "Oh, I have to do this," or "My doctor said I have to do this," or "The hospital says this." I'm like, "Wait, no, like there are so many other choices." And so it really was him prompting me to get into it. So did my doula certification and training with a really good friend, and we started working together as doulas. I had my kids at home, um, and very quickly realized I actually like to be in charge, which should not have been a surprise to anyone who knows me. So I was like, wait, I think I want to go the midwifery route for home birth community midwifery. So started that journey. Yeah, it's been 6 years of actively being a part of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And the mental health side and kind of this side of it was, again, going back to my mom, I was just modeled this beautiful transition into motherhood. She did it so well and did it so seamlessly. She had twins even. And then I had a really rough time with my second. And as I started helping people have babies, realized we do all this prep for birth, all this prep in pregnancy, and then postpartum, kind of like the other shoe drops. If you don't have a strong community, and if that community isn't aware of what postpartum can be, you didn't have a ton of support. So, a really good friend of mine who worked in mental health had approached me about Root and Rise and was like, "Hey, do you think we have a need for this in our community?" I said yes. And then she and I did it, made it happen. But yeah, my mom was an example. And then my husband's really the one who was like, "Hey, at the center of your soul, what brings you joy?" And I was like, "I just really want to help people have babies." And now that's what I get to do.
That is such a beautiful story. But I knew it had to be fueled, which was actually going to be my next question. But I think that this pretty much answered it so beautifully. When you look at all the work that you do and the information that you put out, and the way that you've kind of structured your business, you could tell that it's fueled by passion and love, which you don't always see, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's so palpable when you look at what you guys have created. So I had to ask, I was going to ask you, was there like a specific moment that made this more than a career, that made this something that was like fueling you, even a passion? And I think that that really kind of answered it. But is there anything else? Was there any other specific moment that you can
Yeah.
think of?
Yeah, I think that yeah, good question. Yeah, it really is a passion, which the doula work started out as like as a passion project. Like I still worked my like 9 to 5 and it really was just this way hobby. That's a weird word for it, but
Mhm.
instead of
Yeah.
crocheting, knitting or like I don't know what other people do, I was like, I'll help people have babies. And really quickly just there's so much that happens during pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, and it's really not just about the baby or the mom, it's really about the family and the partner and everyone involved, and if we I just it lights me up inside to think about if we can just hold that with such tenderness and care, what healing can happen for generations. And Root and Rise being like an actual brick and mortar, we have, clinicians on staff. Really, the moment that made this happen was my co founder, Kate, being like, hey, I keep getting calls for women, and it all traces back to their postpartum experience. So, if we could create a place that was tailored to that, with both having their babies here, the mental health programming being towards perinatal health, like what healing can happen for everyone in that community, their partners, their family, their kiddos. And so I don't know if there was an exact moment. It was more of a decision to be like, okay, yeah, like
No,
let's
but I
do
love
it.
it.
Yeah, she sold her house. I cashed in my 401k. Here we are 6 months later.
I love it. I love it. And you guys really are kind of reshaping the way that we even have the conversation, because I feel like it's much more, like you said, we prepare so much for birth and baby, but we don't even sometimes it's not even a thought to prepare about postpartum. We just assume that the support that we might be getting from neighbors or family is going to be enough, and we don't actually consider the details. And then when we're in the thick of it, we're like, oh my god, I need support, or you don't realize until you're out of it and you're like, wow, I was going through it and I should have asked for help sooner, but I didn't know I was.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And one of the things too with it is even as a doula, the postpartum period is so important for us. We actually have like an 18-page postpartum guide that we include in our birth resources. Cause to your point, it's like, wait, hold on. There's this whole other part that
Yeah.
happens. Like, congrats, you had the baby. Now you have to keep it alive. And
And
keep,
yourself. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, 100%. There's got to be more focus on the next phase of it all.
Well, and I also want to ask you, because you kind of mentioned earlier that I think it was with your second birth that you
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
struggled a little bit. So, how did your own experiences kind of mold what you created and how you show up for other women?
Yeah, so with my second, I ended up I guess she was probably like, I don't know, 7, 8 weeks old, and there was one day where my husband walked in and he was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Nope, I think I wanna throw her against the wall." And, I'm blessed enough to be in a relationship that I felt safe enough
To
saying
say
that to
that, yeah.
him and knew I wouldn't be met with judgment. I'm also super blessed that my mom has been in this world, so, when I called her with those feelings and thoughts, it wasn't met with a, "Oh, no." It was a, "Okay, all right, well, what are we gonna do about it? Let's get you some help." So I started seeing a therapist, um, which was just so helpful of, like, being able to sit in a room and, like, talk through really what I was experiencing. I had such a fear of losing myself in motherhood. Like, that is, like, a cornerstone fear. I did not wanna do it. I was able to get through that with the first and keep my career and everything, but something about having my second, um, was really hard. Also, I, like it's a girl. She is a girl. She's 8, 8 and a half now. But I, like, really didn't think I could be a good girl mom, and I don't know what the root of that was, but it was a really big fear of mine, and so, when she was inside, it was easy to cope with that, but as she was born and the realization of, like, "Oh, I have to raise a daughter," like, I had an irrational fear that I was gonna be a bad girl mom for some reason. So I had to face a lot of that, and that came out in a lot of rage and a lot of anxiety with her specifically, and, um, definitely being welcomed into those feelings by professionals was huge and a part of what we've shaped here and creating a space that feels like home. Our office is really warm colors, it doesn't feel clinical. There's no, like if you walk in, it's like walking into someone's house, like, we've kept it really calm, and I think that was a part of it. The office I went to was in someone's home, and so I think, like, subconsciously, that really put that in me as well of keeping things warm and welcoming in that space.
Well, I love how honest you were, because I can also kind of, like, speaking from experience with my first, not so much with my second. So we spoke a little bit
Yeah.
earlier. I just had a baby, and my experience now is so different. I actually didn't realize how much I struggled with my first until I had my second, because I was like, this is such a different experience. This is like, with my first, I also felt similar things where I was like, I felt like it was my first and I was so young, and I was the first of my friends having a baby, so I really did feel like my whole life was gonna change. I felt like I was gonna lose all my friends. I felt like the relationship to the people that I love the most was gonna shift dramatically. I thought that nobody really cared about me anymore, that it was all about the baby, and it wasn't that I was envious, but I felt
Yeah.
like it was okay to, like, sink the reason I say that is because I felt it was okay to kind of, like, sink into these feelings and not ask for help,
Yeah.
and also just kinda not even realize it, like, just kind of prioritize baby and what everybody else needs and like keep trucking forward. So for me, I think it's such amazing work that you do because I wish that I would have had something like Root and Rise in Miami when I did have my first that I could maybe lean on. Even
Yeah.
if it's like the community setting that you guys have, or like just knowing that I'm not alone and being able to approach the situation with the same response that you had, which was okay. It's okay. It's not gasp, oh my God, she wants to throw her baby against a wall. It's okay. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, there's such strength in sharing and in numbers and, sitting in a group and expressing those feelings and then someone else being like, "Oh, I've had that intrusive thought too," is huge. And that's what we're finding with the moms in our space now, that you might start out all as strangers, but sitting in a space and sharing and being able to affirm and encourage it helps you find your own healing too.
I mean, I completely agree, and I wanna ask you because you wear a couple different pretty major hats in birth work,
Yeah.
but I love them because I think that they all, like, weave it braid into each other so well. I think that
Yeah.
they're so synergistic. So I wanted to ask you, you're gonna be a CPM soon, or did you already take your exam? Soon,
So
right?
I haven't taken my exam. I'm done with all my births.
Okay.
So I'm still in my apprenticeship, but should be able to sit for my exam this summer. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So you're gonna sit for your exam, you're gonna pass it, and you're gonna be a CPM soon, and you're also the founder of this perinatal health kind of like empire I want to say that you guys have over there because for me it's so amazing because you guys have a little bit of everything which I know we're going to break
Yeah.
down a little bit later into the episode. But so how do all of these roles come together including your doula work?
Yeah. So I think so the doula work was definitely like the step into birth world. And then, like I said, transitioning into midwifery, but I still take on doula clients. Not everyone wants to have their baby at home. Um, it's really being able, the continuity of care. And I think that's where it plays into it is being able to work with people through pregnancy, through the birth, and then being able to provide a space postpartum if it's the right fit for them. There are moms who don't need day treatment for perinatal mood disorders. Like postpartum does go well for them, which is great. But for the ones who do need it, being able to know that they're receiving care and programming that encompasses the full picture is really important to me. So I think that's how kind of they weave and, being able to check in with clients at really 3 to 4 months is when a lot of people started to start to experience those mood disorders. It's not necessarily week 2 or 3. It could be, but it's kind of like you were saying, once like everything's focused on baby, we've kept the baby alive. People kind of go back to their regular days, the meal train ends, and it's like, wait, where did all the support go? So, wearing the hat of doula and midwife through birth and now providing this space that Kate and I have created, it gives that people that continuity. And if someone's worked with us in birth and knows, okay, I had a great experience with the doula support, I've gotten to know them, they know my birth story, they already know a little bit about me, then it's great because they can come in and they've got that history as well. So yeah, it's kind of a both and the knowledge that you have as a midwife can play into the postpartum side as well. So I'm not a mental health clinician, so I don't wear that hat. I've got no letters behind my name to provide counseling, but we have an amazing team here who does that.
I love that. And so I have to ask because you work so intimately with women through their birth experiences, whether it be through their labor or after in their postpartum heaviness. Is there something working so closely with women during pregnancy, birth, and postpartum that taught you something that maybe you didn't expect?
Yeah, I think yeah, that's a good question. So, I think even the most beautiful birth where it happens where you want it to happen and overall everything goes, quote unquote according to plan. I think there's always something unexpected, and I think being able to name that and process that, even if it's not like a bad unexpected, just we learn a lot about ourselves through pregnancy and birth. And if we're willing to kind of name what we've learned or what we've faced, I think it really can set us up well for postpartum. So I think being able to look back on stories and be like, okay, this is what I learned about myself or parenting. Like babies in the womb teach us a lot about
Mhm.
parenting even before they're born. So I think when walked through that holistically and looking at birth as this in pregnancy as more than just having a baby, it can set yourself up well for postpartum and be like, okay, that caught me by surprise. This was different than I expected. What did I learn and how can I take it into this season as a new parent? But yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question, but
No, it does, and I was actually speaking, on another episode that I recorded, I was speaking to one of the midwives. I love that you said that because through birth, I realized how I like to be supported in general.
yeah.
Because it kind of pushes you to your limits, and through that process, as crazy of a wild ride it might be, you really do learn a lot about yourself, and so
Yeah.
I think you said it so beautifully, but I really resonate with that because if I had not gone through birth, I wonder how long it would have taken me to realize how I really like to be supported. Not just how everyone says support should look like, but how it feels supportful for me, you
Yeah,
know?
that's good. Yeah.
So I love that you said that. Um, I also wanted to ask you, because of all your experience, if there's any patterns that you've noticed today in how women experience birth or postpartum that you wish were different.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, one, I think there's such a push on birth to like, and this is going to sound really like off brand as a doula, but to have a birth plan. And I think that knowing your preferences is super important, but we are such a highly anxious society. So I don't know how old you are. I'm guessing I'm a little older given my kids' ages, but there's like such a heightened anxiety just in general. I think with information, social media, I mean, there's so much research. If you have not read The Anxious Generation, I think it is a great read for anyone who is in a human to human job because it just talks a lot about where young adults have come from. So a lot of people who are now birthing people their ages, they would have been in that. So those birth plans, while beautiful because we should all have a conversation about our preferences, they can get held two ways. Either people hold so tight to them that at the smallest detour, even in a home birth setting where like the people coming, it's in your own home, like there are some things like you might not make it in the tub and you might have your baby on the bed and there are people who are so tight on like, no, I'm having that water birth that a beautiful birth on the bed leaves them thinking it went wrong or it didn't go how they planned. And then on the other side, you have people who are so anxious that they can't even think of a preference because it not happening cripples them, that they really lose their agency and autonomy in the birth space. So I think I always say a half assed birth plan is the birth plan, like is the best. Like, know what's really important to you, communicate that but make sure there's room for gray. And there's a lot of gray in birth and there's a lot of gray in this world, but we all have things that are black and white to us. So really knowing like what those non-negotiables are for you. And I think you said it really well about being like supported. It might not be a medical checklist, but like what is truly important to you with how you're treated, the words used about you, how your body's spoken about. So I think that's what I see and that I wish people could understand that like you can't hold on too tightly, but you also need to be able to hold on to something because this is your birth and birth should never happen to you. You should never feel like your birth happened to you. That's kind of like the soapbox I get on in the
I
birth
mean,
world.
I couldn't agree more. I had a conversation about this recently where I was asking, like, is it a myth or reality that birth plans are productive? And to
Yeah.
me, it's kind of, I want to say parts of it are reality, but most of it is myth. I agree. I see so many people, I myself got married to a birth plan, married to it. And the second that it detoured, I felt like I failed because my birth
Right.
plan didn't go identical to how I saw it. And
Yeah.
so I always like to say that having birth preferences is great. And if you want to create like a birth plan, that's fine because it'll teach you different things about birth that maybe you wouldn't have been exposed to had you not sat down to think about it. So it might kind of crack your head open in that world where you might be like, you know what, maybe like it might force you to sit down and think about things that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise. But I love how you said that you have to be okay with being in the gray because babies don't know your plan. Babies don't come to plan. They rarely ever do. And so being okay with living in the gray a little bit and just kind of living in the moment because then you're going to have this beautiful baby and I would hate for to take any part of the moment away, because it's such a beautiful moment and to be able to live in it without that kind of feeling like you failed when in reality you did nothing wrong. Everything went
You
to
can't
plan.
anytime I teach childbirth ed, my last slide says you can't fail birth. Like, you can't fail it, but we have such people are so anxious, and I think that social media can be so helpful, but it also just really distorts truth, and I think that plays into the postpartum is that you either see people who look like they're having this great experience, and our algorithms are so great at, like, fueling our fears, so it's like you start down a rabbit hole and it just keeps going. So in postpartum, I think you said it well, like, it's not just about the baby. There is a mom and a partner, and sometimes there's not a partner, sometimes it's a single mom, but there is a human that birthed this baby or has adopted this baby or taken this baby in, and that's a really hard adjustment. And so making sure that you have support in place is beyond having someone to hold the baby while you shower. I had a mom recently, she's like, "Well, I'm showering and brushing my teeth." I was like, "So that's not self-care, that's necessity. What are we doing for self-care? Like, what are you doing for you?" And we do live in a society where moms are expected to be able to do it all. You're supposed to be able to have your kick-ass career, you're supposed to be able to have kids and somehow keep up with play dates for your older children and volunteer and do all this stuff, and we just don't give enough space. And I would say we don't give enough space for the journey to be specific. There are moms who do need to get back out into society sooner because that is what's going to bring them health and thriving. And then there's moms who really need to be more in a slow solitude, like, have more space to come back. And we just live in a world that's so judgmental of people's personal needs. And I think that plays more into postpartum because we don't post our whole birth story. So like you can't judge someone's birth as easily as you can judge, like, oh, they're back at the park, or like, oh, she hasn't been to book club in 3 months. Like,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, check in on them, make sure they're okay, but also, honor the story that each person needs to find their health and their healing.
I couldn't agree more and I agree that social media kind of does a really good job at forcing you to think that you have to fit in one of two categories, for
Yeah,
example. And so you can be the person who just wants to be home with your partner for 3 months. If that's what's going to make you feel most yourself, then let's
exactly.
do it. You know what I mean? But, or you could be the type of person that, like, after week one, you're like, I'm cooped up way too long. Me and the baby need to get some sunlight. Let's get out of here. And
Yeah,
if that's what you need, then let's do it. So
yeah,
I love the way that you said that. And I also wanted to mention because I feel like a lot of people don't talk about it enough. Doulas aren't just for
yeah.
labor. They're not
That's
just for
true.
labor. They're not just for birth. And I think a lot of times we think about our registry and we're thinking about like the nicest diaper pail and the best crib that vibrates when we walk away from it or whatever it might be. And I think that everyone should kind of consider maybe putting like a little fund aside for a postpartum doula because I think that I had a friend I have not had the privilege of having a doula through either of my births, but I had a friend who had a postpartum doula. So she didn't have one through labor, but she had one postpartum. And man, her experiences from what she told me were night and day. And what a doula can do postpartum can really help really lighten your load, but also help shape the way you continue through motherhood. I think so, at least, because that foundation of right when you had your baby is such a vulnerable time. And I think that it really shapes you going forward. So I wanted to ask you, so many people don't even consider the benefits of a postpartum doula. Many only factor this for birth. So what is the role of a doula across pregnancy, but really in the postpartum phase that not enough people talk about?
Yeah. So I would say in pregnancy, it's really that emotional support, advocacy, birth support, the physical and emotional, like during labor, and continuity of care, which is huge. Most doulas will stay with you throughout labor. We always say whether we're there 10 hours or 24 hours, you get that continuity. But in the postpartum, it's just someone to really provide what villages and communities used to do. It's someone coming over and either holding baby while you take care of yourself, or taking care of things related to babies so that you can focus on other things. So, laundry and diapers and meal prep and light housework around caring for baby is huge. And a lot of times, if you can afford it, like overnight postpartum doulas, gosh, what a lifesaver. I am so blessed my mom played that role for me with all 3 kids. She's
Love her.
amazing. I love her. She lived with us for 6 weeks after each kid, except my second because my sister had to go and have a baby 3 weeks later. So I only got her for half the time because my mom literally went from our house to my sister's house. But having someone who can, like, comfort the baby, help with in between feeds so that you and your partner can get a solid, even though it's only 2 to 3 hours, like, not wondering if your baby's okay or if they need to be settled can just do wonders. Because sleep deprivation plays into those mood disorders so much. If you think about it, if you're exhausted and running on, you know, steam, you're not able to really have that mental fortitude. So postpartum doulas both during the day just to provide that extra layer of care and support for you, the baby, and the house. And then in the evenings, overnight doulas can be a game changer, especially if you're someone doesn't function well on little sleep, which there are humans who can sleep 4 to 5 hours and like go run a marathon. And then you have people like me who are like, I need a good 10 hours to feel like myself. Having a registry item, or there's a lot of programs now that help cover doula support, really seeing if you can use one of those to bustle up your support could be huge on the postpartum side.
Yeah, I totally agree. And especially coming from like as somebody who kind of had to move away from her village. So I had this
Yeah.
huge village and support, which is so funny because with my first I struggled so much. And with my second I have like hardly any support, but for some reason I feel like
Like, I've
everything is
done it
so
before. We can
yeah,
keep this.
there's something about it. Maybe it's because I don't know, but maybe it's because he's not my first. And it was such the identity
Yeah,
crisis that I had with my first, I feel like was a big part of it, I want to say.
absolutely.
But I wanted to ask you, so since you are witnessing postpartum in such a raw form and up close and personal, is there anything that you see that a lot of people don't see that you maybe wish families had a better understanding of that could maybe help them better support women going through
Yeah,
this?
that's a good question. So one of the things when we started, we thought we would see a lot more like postpartum depression and anxiety, which we do see a lot of postpartum anxiety. But one of the things I think we see more than we like would have thought before we really dove into this work full time is a lot of perinatal OCD, which I think people are just not as aware of. So it's a lot of, new moms really looking for reassurance over and over, a lot of wondering if they're doing things right. Am I doing this okay? Is this bottle too warm? Is this too cold? That just kind of like obsessiveness over if things are safe, if things are okay. Is this right? Is this wrong? And needing a lot of reassurance. I think that's something that gets overlooked just as like new mom worry, which we kind of celebrate, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
they're so worried. They're doing such a good
She's
job.
such a good mom. She
Yeah.
cares, you know?
But if you're seeing or around someone who continues to ask and seek that reassurance, there might be something deeper going on that can use more of a clinical approach. Because it's often, they're only saying it the one time, but they've already been thinking it 7 times before they actually verbalize the thought. Like it's been running on a hamster wheel in their head. So I think that's something that I wish partners, support people, communities were more aware of, that new moms seeking reassurance isn't always just seeking reassurance. If it is a continuous habit that you see them doing often and again on new things, it might be more of an underlying like OCD that could just use some more clinical care so that they can feel less stress and less obsession and really enjoy their baby.
Well, I love that you called that out because I think that a lot of women, especially right after having a baby, they do face that. But I feel like it's something that you don't really recognize within yourself. And sometimes, like you said, it might just be like a one off thing. But if it's something that is consistent and it is reoccurring and you notice this in yourself, where you're like, you are asking yourself 7 times in your head before you ask for the reassurance out loud, it might almost be freeing to kind of recognize this and be like, okay, maybe this might be that thing that might help me feel a little bit better through this journey that I'm going through. Cause that's kind of something that's hard to pinpoint. And I feel like is often trivialized. Like you said, it's kind of chalked up to being a good mom or whatever it might be, but it can be very draining and I'm sure very stressful for new moms. So I love that you said that because That's such a great thing
But
for
now we just Google the heck out of things and then make it even worse in rabbit hole. So it's
I
better if
couldn't
we
agree more.
help them get some clinical support and, be in a
Yeah.
room that we can share those thoughts and get the right tools.
I love it, and I love that you've created a community that's actually, like, expert backed because I feel like now there's so much misinformation, and people oftentimes go, like, as their first source of information to, like, TikTok or Instagram, and it's like these are terrible, terrible places to seek information. So I love that you've created kind of like a hub, like a one-stop shop where people can kind of go and get all of their questions answered, and
Yeah.
so I think it's so beautiful. And I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit more about perinatal mental health because I think the topic itself isn't talked about enough. I think we
Yeah.
do talk a lot about your mental health postpartum, but we don't talk about it at large. So, again, I feel like it's not talked about enough. What does this actually include for people who don't really understand the full scope of perinatal mental health?
Yeah. So, Root and Rise, our focus is day treatment. So, intensive outpatient programming, but it's perinatal. So, we have both pregnant and people postpartum. So, a lot of times that OCD, the anxiety, or that depression can actually start when you're pregnant, not just after the baby. So, again, that reassurance, the worried well, just people who are excessively worried. The big ones that people know of are depression, anxiety, the OCD. We also see the onset of bipolar during pregnancy can pop up, and then as well as postpartum. So, our design is that we're here to really give them tools and support for those things that could just be, a checkbox on a form of like, yep, I've had sad thoughts, or yes, I've thought about, hurting myself. But what do you do with that? Like, if someone checks the box, what do you do with that? So it's really designed as a place that they can get the help they need before needing to be like inpatient. That's like that next level of care after us. And so it can come up in pregnancy. It can come up if you have a history of mental health. That's a risk factor for experiencing, a heightened sense of these during your pregnancy or postpartum piece. But it's really kind of those four main components that can pop up.
Well, I think that it definitely just draws some light on some different sort of avenues that we can
Yeah.
struggle while we're either pregnant or postpartum that I think a lot of people don't realize. I remember when I was in nursing school, I learned that a lot of mental health kind of arises or mental health issues arise when you're kind of like in that young adult stage of your 20s. And I was thinking to myself in that moment, so many people have kids around this time.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
wonder how many of these things start to bubble up during this time and then maybe they're dismissed or maybe they're overlooked because they're chalked up to whatever it might be and then so I was so interested in that kind of aspect of things.
And there's so many hormone shifts during pregnancy. So there's a huge shift postpartum, right? So that's why someone who even maybe went through pregnancy without experiencing a mood disorder in that postpartum phase, their hormones shift again. And that's what kind of can bring it to bubble up, like you're saying. But pregnancy does that too. And so it could be lying dormant and maybe you've never had anxiety, but now you've got a shift of hormones. You're at the age where things start to pop up. And here we are feeling more anxious than we ever have before. The other piece of it too is, if you're in a relationship, any relationship is hard. And then you add a baby, you add hormone shifts, that can bring a lot up for people too. And so sometimes that's where we see these things come up is in the dynamics, either with the grandparents of the baby or with your partner. You start to find yourself being more agitated, being more short, or being more reclusive than normal than you would in a relationship because we've added a new component of the baby, plus all the hormone swings. Not everyone's bodies are gonna be able to stabilize that without some regulation and some
Yeah, I always say that this is one of my questions for God whenever I meet the fella. Why?
Yeah,
What is up with the hormone drops and shifts in postpartum? Like if
yeah,
you could have created it
real.
like that is my one question for him, but
And
whatever.
preparing, like, as
Yeah.
the doula midwife piece, going back to that, preparing people for it. Like, on day 3, 4, 5, it is your biggest hormone drop. You are getting milk, you're probably gonna cry, making sure their partners know so that it's not like "Oh my gosh, what do we do?" Like,
Yeah.
"Nope, we expected this. We were
Yeah.
told this was gonna happen." And then what does that look like for stabilization after? Like, are you good after day 5, or are things still up and down, and do we need to keep an eye on you for the next few weeks and see if, there's a better way to help you get through.
I love it, and I love even the way that you approach the conversation. Because even me, I feel so comfortable kind of just talking to you, so I imagine that your patients kind of feel that same warmth and opening, so I love that they have that, and I wanted to ask you because I think it's really hard to, again, kind of bringing back my story, I didn't notice until my second baby that I struggled so much with my first in postpartum. Even with things like postpartum rage, like I just kind of chalked it up to, oh, it was hormones. But I know I was filled with rage with my first, and
Yeah.
I took it out on people who did not deserve it. And so I wanted to ask you, what does postpartum anxiety or depression actually look like? Not the clinical description that a lot of people are kind of fed, but in real life scenarios that people might actually be able to recognize in themselves. So, kind of like how we spoke about the anxiety and the intrusive thoughts. So, something that people might actually be able to realize, like, oh my God, like I do that, like that is totally me.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the reassurance is a big one. I think a lot of times, like we talked about, people chalk it up to like, "Oh, I'm just being a good mom. I'm just checking again." But like, how many times are you checking? How many times have you Googled that? Like, is there more going on? Detachment is a big one, just a shift. So I would say if you've experienced a shift in like wanting to hold your baby and then slowly over time you're like, I don't really wanna hold them. I will, but the desire isn't there, a detachment. Thinking your baby's better off without you. That's a big one of like, "You know what? They would just be better off without me." Not necessarily having suicidal thoughts, like that is something that can happen, but just even thinking like, "Well, they're better off with my mom," or "They're better off with their dad," or "They're better off my neighbor can watch them. They're better off with them." So having those thoughts about your own ability to parent more than just like once or twice, like a continuous, maybe every other day, or it's something silly. Like you're trying to get them out of the car to go into the grocery store and just be like, oh, they would just be better off if someone else. I can't do this right. Like someone else could do this better than me. Like, are you constantly thinking someone else would be better than you at parenting your kiddo? Also, on the opposite, how anxious and like jittery do you get with the thought of someone else watching your baby for a bit? Like, we should want to be with our babies and our babies want to be with us, but there's also a level of we can see people coming in with a lot of anxiety who just can't imagine someone else holding their baby even for 5 minutes while they go to the bathroom. So, do you find yourself like reorganizing your entire day, your schedule, your life around you having your baby? Because only you can take care of the baby. Kind of those two sides of the same coin. And the rage piece is real. I rage is a big one. I personally that was a big one with my second. So just having those thoughts of wanting to throw your baby against the wall. There's the book Good Moms Have Bad Thoughts, Scary Thoughts. It's a great read on just like it's okay to have those, but how often are they happening? And do you find yourself beating up a pillow? Like, do you scream into a pillow? Are you banging on a pillow to get that frustration out? Because you know it's wrong to throw your baby against a wall, but you still want to do that. So, what does that balance look like in your mind? And do you need to take that aggression out? So,
I love that you said that. And a lot of those are definitely things that, like, again, I didn't recognize a lot of the things that I went through with my first, but I wish I had somebody who told me that, who was like, "Oh, that, like really look into that, really think about that." Because I did feel that a lot. And I felt like when I had my first, I was the only one who was doing this for the first time. I was
mhm,
surrounded by my mom, who had two beautiful babies, me and my sister, so she knew what she was doing. My sister helped take care of me. She knew what she was doing. My husband, he had little siblings, so he knew what he was doing. And then here was I where I was
mhm.
like, I have no idea what I'm doing. It was my first baby. Everything was so new. And I think that's a really good one to being able to recognize. And I think that parts of it's normal. Like you're always going to kind of feel like, what am I doing? This is also new
Right.
to me, especially as a
Exactly.
first time mom. But being able to recognize when you feel like your baby is better off in someone
Yeah.
else's hands, I think that that's a really powerful one because I definitely felt that and I don't feel that now. And I also think it's cool to see how different my experiences can be. And they're not very far apart in age. My
They're
s
different kids too.
Exactly, yeah, different kids, different scenarios, but different experiences altogether, Like, with my first, I definitely felt comfort with my mom and my husband, like, just kind of taking over because I thought that I wasn't gonna do it well enough, and then with my second, it's just a different experience where I kind of have a bit more of that anxiety that I didn't have with my first, where I was like, "Oh, like, are they doing it right?" kinda thing, but I didn't have that with my first, and I
Yeah. And
just
I
think
think
so
that
interesting.
It is so interesting. I think one of the things that we found too is the intrusive thoughts are such a common denominator, but
Mhm.
it's what do you do with it? And
Yeah.
can you recognize that that is an intrusive thought? And so a lot of our groups are around intrusive thoughts and being able to take those captive and being able to work through that. Cause I think that's something that, there's a lot of buzz around them, but do people actually share them? And if you're having the intrusive thoughts, how frequent are they? And do you know how to realize they aren't rational? I think the line on when people might need to consider, like, do I need clinical support in a program versus like just once a week therapy or talking to their mom friends is when does the line of rational, like when does the irrational thought start to sound rational to you? And that's the space
I like
that we
that.
really created Root and Rise for.
I really, really like that because that's kind of something that you can not ground yourself in, but you can use to identify different things. I really like. Can you repeat that one more time for me?
Idea is like when does the irrational intrusive thoughts start to become rational? And when you find yourself kind of blurring that line, that's where really where there's a conversation of like, okay, do I need more than just my friends, my family to really process and move through this in a healthy way?
I think that recognizing the problem is such a big part of it, and I think that that will help so many women because I think that's a good way to put it, and I think that a lot of women now can kind of use that to kind of gauge where they're at. And I do want to ask you a little bit more about intrusive thoughts because, like you said, it's so common and it's something that so many new moms, seasoned moms that we deal with.
Yeah.
What is it that we actually do with these intrusive thoughts? Because it's one thing to recognize them, and then what do we do with them?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's why we have clinicians that walk them through it. But one of the big things is so our program uses both like CBT and DBT therapy, which are both like clinical styles. So that's one of the like what do we do with them? We help give tools to think through them. So CBT specifically is around it helps bring awareness and teaches us to how to reframe them. So that's one of the things that we have to learn to do with those intrusive thoughts is reframe them and to for instance, we could take the one that someone else is better for my baby and reframing that like, no, I'm the best person for my baby. This is my baby. My body grew this baby, or I chose this baby if you're not the birthing parent or an adoptive parent. So, learning how to reframe them is a big piece of it and to name them and what they really are. That's a big part of it. And sharing them. We have to share them. If you keep them inside, they just grow and get stronger. But voicing them into a safe space and helping other people name the lie in them is huge.
No, I totally agree. And that actually brings me to a point that I wanted to talk about a little bit further in the conversation. But I love that you guys bring in this whole, so the CBT, the DBT, and the trauma informed care. And so I kind of wanted to ask you, a lot of people do not factor these into postpartum care, or they
Yeah,
think that they're extremely intense, that once you're at that point, that you must be doing pretty bad. So I wanted to break down that stigma because it's totally not the case. And I wanted you to kind of talk about how these are actually tools and that they're not, it doesn't mean that you've reached a certain level of severity, that it's just
right.
that these are certain tools that might help you and how you need to be supported and how you need to be helped through this. So I kind of
Yeah,
wanted to
so
talk about that.
day treatment is designed as because this will come into how they help. So it's group and individual therapy. So our program or any IOP, whether it's for perinatal like we are, or just general IOP, intensive outpatient programming, is a combination of group and individual therapy. So like CBT and DBT, which are clinical, tools and styles, we use those in our group space. So the group being in a group working through these tools is huge, right? Because if you see someone using a tool, like even if it's a fork, we learn how to use a fork by
Exactly.
watching other people use a fork.
Yeah.
So same with these practices of if we're seeing other people practice naming their intrusive thoughts. And then the neat thing is the clinicians that lead the group are the clinicians that do the individual therapy. So you're sharing things in a group space and then you're given space later to dive deeper with your clinician one on one, which is really helpful. Again, I'm probably going to butcher this because I'm not a social worker
No,
or
no, no.
mental
I
health
totally
counselor.
understand.
I should go get them from the other room and be like, you come there. But so cognitive behavioral therapy is structured, it's an evidence-based approach that really helps us challenge unhelpful or like distortive thinking. So it's used a lot with those intrusive thoughts, right? Because that's a distorted thought. It's not helpful thinking. It's kind of off the main path of where our brains should be going in a healthy environment. And it really helps us learn how to process and evaluate the thoughts we're having, either about ourselves, about our stories, about our upbringing, about what trauma we faced. And then the dialectical behavior therapy builds on top of that, but it focuses more on like the emotional regulation. So as our moms are going through this, they're given tools to help emotionally regulate, to de-stress, to build their tolerance for situations that might bring up feelings and emotions. So what tools do I have for, say, my mother-in-law tends to agitate me, or she's a trigger for my anxiety or my depression? That DBT helps give me ways to regulate, evaluate, and tools to really be in that space, bring myself down from those heightened moments. So it's like skills for real time, in real time for those hard moments. So those two combined are really great because it helps with the, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, this is how I evaluate and really cognitively process through. And then DBT is more of that body awareness of, okay, these are tools and things I can do for when I start to feel and think those things. How do we bring them together? Um, and the trauma informed piece, you never know someone's story. We probably all have some sort of trauma, whether big T or little t trauma in our life. So we've really created a program and space that while we cannot dive into childhood trauma in a group space, being trauma informed and being able to name that and how it might be playing into their postpartum or perinatal experience is really important.
I love the way that you put it, and I think that the way that you stated it, it really called to attention that it is not a level of severity. It's not like one leads to another. It's just what you need, what it is that you need out of this experience that would be most beneficial to you and how you move forward in your postpartum journey. So I love the way that you put it. And so I wanted to ask you next. So group therapy. I think that it's such a beautiful way to approach things because I think there's so much power in being able to identify that you're not alone and
Yeah.
that there's somebody else with you, and also being able to voice some of these things aloud and having somebody there next to you like, "Oh my god, I've been there." Even if it's that part of it where like other people can kind of be your soundboard, but you could be theirs. I think it's so beautiful. So I wanted to get a little bit more into that. How does group therapy really change the healing experience compared to like an primarily only individual therapy?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's what you said. It's knowing you're not alone. So that's a huge part of what we hear from the women who come into the program is that they think they're the only one. And maybe they haven't shared the thought, but then someone else does. And it's like, oh, wait, I'm not the only person who's thought that. Also, we all have different gifts. And so we were even talking earlier as a team. It's so fun to watch someone be able to encourage someone else. Like, it's not just the clinicians encouraging, like, they're there to run the group, protect the space. They bring the expertise, but sometimes it's the other mom being like, "What? No, like you're amazing. You can do this, like this and this and this and this." And then it's like 2 weeks later, that same person is having a hard day. And it's like, wait, no, remember you told me all these things. Like, believe that in yourself too. And I think one of the powerful things about group therapy is there's always someone ahead of you or behind you, and they're literally just postpartum journey. So we've had people come with 6-day olds and we've had people come with 8-month olds. And so, depending on where you are, you're sitting in that space and you can see, wow, this is how far I've come. I remember how hard it was when they were 6 days. I've kept them alive for 8 months. This is where I am now. Or the opposite of like, man, this seems so hard. I'm 3 weeks into parenting. I'm anxious. I'm not sleeping. And then you hear the story of the woman with the 4-month-old who's like, I've been where you are and look where I am now. So just that 360, I think, is huge and helps us really see our own strengths because we also get to be the person encouraging, which always is like, wait, I do have something to add and I do have value. And so being able to share that with others just really creates a space of healing. So that combined with being able to go into your individual and dive into your own story even more just sets such a good foundation.
I couldn't agree more. And I can't help but think while we're talking about this, because there's so much that goes into it. So there's so much that goes into postpartum support and how we can approach things differently. than we're currently doing as a standard.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, why do you think that we focus so much on birth and on pregnancy and on all things baby, but we don't really focus too much on the postpartum support that mom will inevitably need in one way or another? Not saying that all
Yeah.
moms might struggle in postpartum, but we all do need
Still need
support.
help.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I think that like society is moving there. I think there's been a movement towards it. I think other parts of the world are better at it than we
Yeah.
are here in America.
Hmm.
But I think it's because it's messier. And I think in general, society, we don't love to we're again moving more towards it. I don't think we like to invite ourselves into other people's messes. And a lot of people don't like to invite people into
To
their messes.
theirs.
It's a vulnerability thing. It's that community, that village. So I think there's a sense of like, pregnancy, the baby's inside, and birth, like you're meeting your baby. And so society just really focuses on that because it's fun and it's new and it's exciting. And who doesn't love a baby? But then when you get on the other side of it, there's a lot more mess, both physically, like legitimately, like postpartum, you are bleeding. You might be leaking milk. And so there's this discomfort in our own bodies. So why would I invite my friend over when like there's bloody pads in the bathroom and I'm leaking through my shirt? So we naturally just wall off because it's a bit messier. And I think it's harder to invite yourself into that because you don't want to overstep. So I think like the underlining, that's why it's harder to get support because it requires being more authentic and more embracing the mess. And I think it's like with anything, people get really excited and then once an event happens, we forget. It's almost like even with I think about people who go through cancer and like the first meal train, everyone signs up because it's new and you want to help and you want to support. But 6 weeks later, that meal train's done, right? It was like the first 2 weeks after the diagnosis, and I feel like pregnancy and postpartum is the same. Our society moves so fast, we're on to the next thing, that to really be in postpartum with someone means to really sit with them, and we just don't like to do that. We like to move on. We're busy, busy people. So
No, I think that that's a really good way to put it, and I couldn't agree more because even with me, like I had mentioned, I was a first-time mom. None of my friends really had babies, and I did do exactly that. I completely walled myself off, and that actually attributes to it because you feel like it's happened, like that feeling, that fear that I had before of not losing my friends and my life changing, like it's happening. And I think that kind of just normalizing the mess, I think that what's normalized now through social media is this perfect household and the dishes are done and baby's asleep and mom looks beautiful, makeup done, dad's well rested. But I think that what's important is normalizing the mess, normalizing that to be supportive, you do have to sit through that and what to expect. Like she's gonna leak through her shirt if she's
and to
breastfeeding.
not
She is
and
gonna be
to feel like
bleeding. Yeah.
you don't have to apologize. Like
Yeah,
it's okay.
exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't require an apology or a quick clean. Like it's
It's
okay.
so normal, it's so normal, and I think that there's a lot of, shame behind it, which I think is unfair because we've done probably, like, the most literally the most magical thing ever. Every time I think about birth, I'm like, "It doesn't sound real." It doesn't sound like it's real life. It sounds like it's science fiction.
Watching a baby take their first breath is my absolute favorite thing.
Yeah, it's so magical. So, I do wanna ask you, which is probably gonna be kind of a hard question, so if you don't have an answer, it's okay.
Okay.
I feel like there's so much change that can be done in the way that we approach postpartum care within the United States. If there's one standard that you could change or create for the way that we approach postpartum care in the US, what would it be?
No, I can answer. So one of my favorite things about home birth midwifery is our postpartum schedule. So in community midwifery, where I practice, how I practice with the group I'm with, we see moms at 24 hours. We see them at 3 days. We see them at a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and 6 weeks. And I think that increasing the visibility into someone's postpartum journey, those first 6 weeks, would absolutely change the standard across the country. Because if someone is struggling, there's eyes on it quicker, there's resources sooner, there's noticing that it's been 2 weeks, she's still not sleeping, this baby's still not giving her the rest that she needs. You can just get ahead of the things that we can. Where standard of care, you're just not getting eyes on the mom and the baby. Maybe it's a checklist that the pediatrician on an iPad asking about, their mental health, but it's quick and it's not focused on the person who had the baby. So, really shifting the postpartum to yes, the baby needs to be thriving, they need to be gaining weight, they need to be looking good, but are you spending more than 10 minutes really checking in with the person who had the baby, talking holistically through their sleep, through their eating? What are they eating? Are they eating junk? Are they eating good food? All that's going to play into their mental health. What does support look like? Them saying, like, oh, we're having visitors over. Okay, but what are they doing when they come over? Are they helping you? Is that actually draining you? So, really, that holistic care and postpartum and more visibility, I think, would be huge.
I love that. I think that a lot of people, a lot of providers, I think one of the ways that we do it wrong has to do with the checklist because I
Yeah,
feel like it's become a crutch for a lot of providers where it's like something that they could just like check off of their to do. Like, and I don't want to say because it sounds very cold, but almost like something that you can check off your to do list and sleep well at night knowing that, oh, because she answered within appropriate range of this questionnaire, then she must be doing okay. And then
right.
you can find peace of mind in that. But I think that that's one of the reasons why we're doing it wrong because I think so many, like even myself, so many people lie on the
Yeah,
questionnaires
like, oh, I'm
just
fine.
out of embarrassment. Yeah, just out of embarrassment where they're like, you're told this is supposed to be the most beautiful, magical moment of your life, and you're supposed to be the happiest and in this blissful bubble with your baby. And what if you're not? What if you're
Well, and
not?
it's the fear piece
Yeah.
of, okay, if I check that I'm not doing okay, what happens? There's
Yeah.
no education around, like,
What's
what
next?
happens. It's not necessarily that Child Protective Services is getting called. Our hope is that it's you're getting connected with someone like Root and Rise of like, "Hey, I saw that you said you were overwhelmed and anxious. Here's a program that takes your insurance that you can go to get support and clinical actual, mental health programming, but also like you can bring your baby." So I think there's a lot of education around, okay, if I do click a box, what does
It's
that
okay.
mean for like
Yeah.
what does that actually mean? So I think you're right. The checkbox and then again, not knowing like if I am that person, what's the next step in getting help? So
Yeah, I think that that's so powerful because it's so true. You never know. And when we're dealing with all these intrusive thoughts and just to add to the bucket of what will happen to me and my baby if I do confess that I'm having
yeah.
these dark, terrible fears or thoughts or that I feel this certain way that feels wrong. Because that's the biggest part of it is that it feels so wrong to feel some of these things because of the way that we're kind of told we're supposed to feel. So I love that you're kind of normalizing this reality of modern motherhood that's not beautiful and rainbows and butterflies always. And it can be, and parts of it are.
But it's not
But
always going to be, and that's
yeah,
okay.
but
Yeah.
there are parts that aren't. So I wanted to ask you because I was told a lot in both of mine, which there are a lot of hormones involved in postpartum, but do you ever have you noticed something that women experience that often gets dismissed or chucked into it's just hormones?
Yeah, I mean, all the things we talked about. The sadness, I would say, is the one that gets so sadness and rage are the ones I think get the most like hormones excuse. So being really sad, the baby blues, detachment, being super tired. Like, yes, you're tired, but is the tiredness getting to like more of a depression level? I think that one gets the hormone excuse. And then I think rage. Yeah. Like, oh, it's just your hormones. You'll feel better. It'll calm down. Well, it might, but it also might not. Sometimes it is more than just hormones. There's a mental health piece to it. But depression and rage, I think, get the most hormonal, like, that's why, don't worry about it excuse.
I totally agree. I was gonna say the rage because I struggled it so much and everyone was like, "Oh, that's so normal. Like that's it's expected, you know?" And I was like, "My God, I
Yeah.
want to literally
Well, it's
like
like,
strangle my mom for doing the silliest thing, that's like not even not warranted at
we
all."
had
And it's like
it's
it's not, yeah.
Yeah, we had someone the other day be like, "Yeah, I knew when a piece of cheese set me off, I needed help." And it's like, yeah, if a piece of cheese is setting you off, it's probably not your hormones. It
Yeah.
is, but there's probably more to it than just
Yeah.
your
It could
hormones.
be a
Yeah,
little bit deeper and just being able to kind of
yeah,
recognize that it could be, maybe it's not, and that it could be and being able to have the conversation surrounding it, I think is so powerful.
yeah.
So I wanted to ask you surrounding medication management. I don't want to go too deep into like what medications or what it might be, but I think that I want to go into the stigma surrounding it because I think a lot of people think that it's either dangerous or unsafe. So I wanted to ask you, like, how do you guys and your providers, do you guys have like a team of providers there that help kind of assess the patient holistically to determine what's safest for her goals? Because I know that there's a lot of stigma with medications and breastfeeding or what you should and shouldn't be taking. And So I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, good question. Definitely won't talk about meds in general because I
Yeah,
can't mean specifically, I can't name them. However, we have a psych MP on staff. So full time, she's here and she's exactly for what you said to assess the medications. And it's interesting. We have some people come to us who are on medication and they're like, I want to get off of this. I don't think this is helping. And then we have people come to the program who are like, I am not on anything and I would like to be on something. What can help? So, the neat thing about her certification is that she is a PMHC, so perinatal specialized. So, is very aware of medications, how they interact with our bodies, with breastfeeding, what's safe, what interacts. And so that all of our moms can make a really informed decision on what's best for them. And in my understanding of it all, there are lots of options that are breastfeeding safe and pregnancy safe.
there
And
are.
if your provider is not focused on it from a perinatal mental health piece, it's out of like even the best OB, if they're not trained in medication or the pharmaceutical side, they might be like, oh, you can get off that. Or like, oh, you should just take this. So it really is great that we have someone who's focused on medication for this population. So even if someone doesn't need necessarily group therapy, but if someone's curious about medication for what they're going through, I always recommend to connect with a perinatal specific provider so that you can get the best full picture of what you're going through, both hormonally, what the medications are, and how they might interact in your body at that time and space versus someone who, is 32, not pregnant, not having kids. That medication might look a bit different.
Yeah. And if you can't tell, I love all things root and rise. I wish I would have had that closer to me
Come
when I
out,
had a
come
baby.
visit,
Yeah, no, I definitely will. Next time I'm in Boston, I'm gonna make a trip down
come
there
over.
because I have to. But I love that you guys have kind of like I know I've spoken about it a lot. I think that with social media, we're oftentimes in a lot of different ways forced to think that it's one or the other. You have to fit into like one or two categories. But I love that Root and Rise has kind of approached it. There are so many ways to approach your mental health in your postpartum and perinatal mental health. And I love that you guys kind of tackle all the different approaches to it so that different women can come and also they can feel heard, and I think that as somebody who would've maybe wanted to go down that avenue, but would've felt a lot of shame, I would've felt so much comfort knowing that not only, 1, can I attend group settings where there's other women that are kind of going through the same things that I am, but these questions about these medications, I can actually have people, experts, answer my questions, and we could talk about what's best for me, am I breastfeeding, or whatever it might be, and I love that it's all in one hub because I think so many times for women, it's like, all right, well, you got to do your annual mammogram over here. You got to do your OBGYN over here. Your PAP is over there. And like everything is scattered and it's all over the place. And it's part of the burden and
Yeah,
hassle is
all the
making
different
all the appointments and doing the like continuity of care between the different providers. And oh, but he said this and she said that. And I love that you guys already like made that for women. And
they literally can walk from their clinician's office to the NP's office. They're right next door. So,
that's so
yeah, the
beautiful. It's so
therapists
beautiful.
work so closely with her to make sure that everyone's on the same page. Yeah, it's very important.
I love it. And another thing that I think is super important that a lot of people overlook is the support of your family and your partner. So I love that you guys also involve the family in the
Yeah.
partners, I mean, and your partner into the process. So why do you think that that's so critical?
Well, I think we love for them to be involved. There's sometimes people who don't want to be, and that's okay. Or sometimes our moms are like, I don't want the partner involved or the dad of the baby or whatever. But in situations where they're open to it, we do bring them in as part of our intake process just to get a full picture of like what does support at home look like. And then also towards the end in our discharge process, there's a group therapy session with, sometimes it's just the husband or maybe it's the grandparents and the partner and the mom, but just so that we know during the program and after the people we're helping have that support system and we know how to best encourage them to support her because that's going to look different for everyone. So we try to be as holistic as possible with that piece of the care.
I love that. And actually going into like the holistic care, because you guys also have that included into kind of your model and what you guys offer. So I wanted to ask you, I noticed that you guys do incorporate, I looked at kind of like one of your daily schedules of what it would be like to do one of your sessions of treatment. And I know that you include things like breath work and mindfulness. And so I wanted to ask you what made you include that type of work to complement the clinical therapy that you guys also offer at Root and Rise?
Yeah. So the clinical piece is the bread and butter, the
Yeah.
main part. But yes, on the schedule we do bring in yoga. Being in tune with our bodies is really important. Taking that time to stretch, the breath work, awareness of our bodies, as well as we have a registered dietitian, pelvic floor, and we have a postpartum doula who comes in for like sleep and baby wearing. More so just that because mental health is tied to so much. Like, how do our bodies feel? Are we moving our body? What are we eating? How are we taking care of ourselves? And this is by no means like five-star gourmet meal planning we're doing. It's more just simple, like, okay, our moms are anxious, they're overwhelmed. We are not meal planning any like keto plans or paleo or anything fancy, but it's like, okay, what are just the daily guides and tips that we can give the moms here so that they can feel the best they can with what they have? So it's, every month these people come in and the group looks different. The conversation goes a few different ways, but it's really about just that whole body care. Because how our bodies feel and how we move connects to our mental health. So we want to make sure to give space for all of that in the program.
I totally agree. And when I had my first, I felt like it was so hard to get out of the house and do things because even with all the support, I feel like it was hard to kind of get away from the baby and be able to get that movement and stuff. And one of the things that I love that you guys offer is that you guys actually incorporated in your model like this infant inclusive model where you guys allow moms to bring their babies with them if needed and you guys have care options there to help them get the
Yeah.
support. So I had to ask, which I feel like I already know the answer, but do you think that one of the burdens to women getting the support that they needed and the help that they need is childcare?
100%. Yeah. So infant inclusive, we don't we don't take the older kids. So
Mhm.
that's still a barrier. If you got a
Yeah.
3-year-old, we are not equipped. We are not a daycare, but we do have postpartum doulas on site or retired nurses on site who hold the babies. And so it's really great because they're a part of the program. So, for some of our moms coming, it's easy for them to drop that kiddo off and go into group. Others, we work towards taking that 5 to 10 minutes for themselves. Yeah, but they're right here. The nursery is named Nina's Nursery after my neighbor. He shared that his wife really struggled with postpartum depression. He's older and it's just a really sob story of him just being really grateful for what we're doing. And he's in his 70s. And it was one of those moments like, oh
Oh,
my gosh, like this affects so many people. So
yeah.
babies can come and we love on them and it's kind of fun. They have like their little I mean, they're babies, but
Yeah.
they like to say hi to each other. They've got their preferred seat in the nursery and their own little routines. And so we love to get to love on them while their moms get to love on themselves a bit.
I love that. And so I kind of wanted to jump into like the identity portion. I know we've spoken it a little bit earlier in the podcast, but I wanted to talk a little bit on how you think that we can help women navigate or any advice that you have to help women navigate any mom guilt or perfectionism that they might be facing because it's so rampant nowadays with social media. So is there anything that you can any advice that you can give new moms?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think that it is okay, like giving yourself permission to change, but also giving yourself permission to not change. And that until you're really in that space, you're not going to know. I think a lot about moms who like know they're going to go back to work. Like they're like, I could never be a stay at home mom. And kind of like to the birth plan, they get so set on like, this is what I'm going to be as a mom, or this is what I'm not going to be as a mom, that when you're actually facing yourself in the mirror and you're like, wait, I don't want to go back to work. Or like, I want to go back to work. I don't want to stay home anymore. So I think going into it really open handed and letting yourself explore who you are in this phase, like your body's changed, you've changed, your brain. I mean, there's so much research, your brain changes after being pregnant. So just try not to give yourself any ultimatums before you're in that space. I think is probably my biggest advice. Don't ever say never or I'll always, because until you're there, you don't know. It might be totally different than you expected, and that's okay.
I love that, and I love that you said kinda like giving yourself the grace to change, but also not to change in ways that you don't want
Yeah.
to. I don't remember, I don't remember where I read it, but somewhere I had read that it was like, "Oh, like, through postpartum, you do lose yourself, but in a ways it's almost beautiful because you get to rebuild parts of yourself that
Yeah.
you thought were never in ways you thought were never possible." And I think that it's so true because I was so worried about losing myself and I did lose parts of myself, but in parts of myself that I felt like needed in retrospect needed to be shed.
Yeah.
And now I was able to stand firm in some of my truths and things that were unshakable in the way that I operate and the way that I want to live my life. And then I was also able to kind of move into this new experience and new parts of myself that I thought would never kind of come up to be, and so I think that that's really beautiful. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about the term matrescence, which I always butcher. Am I butchering the pronunciation of this?
I say it right. I think you did great. Let's just go with
Okay. All right, cool. But really, it's about the identity work that we're kind of talking about here. For women who are interested in kind of like exploring this concept of matrescence and this new identity, where can we begin?
Man, there's some good books out there. I'm probably not the best to answer where.
No, no, no. But if you have any good book recommendations, I love it. I'm a huge avid reader, so I'll take
Yeah.
them. Anything
Um,
that comes to mind.
Honestly, Jessica Ulrich, oh, I always book her last name. She
Mhm.
wrote Beautiful Chaos.
Mhm.
It's a poet. It's a book of poems.
Mhm.
I think that's a great place to start. I just think it, like, helps you process, like, "Okay, this is where I'm at now in motherhood." But I think, like, even if you don't need mental health help, like Root and Rise, I think everyone needs a group of 3 to 5 women or birthing people, whatever you identify with, to sit in a group and just talk about what you're experiencing. I think
Totally.
that's the best place to start. Like, I think, all the older ladies have their mom friends that they've been friends with since
Yeah.
our or 2. I think our society's lost that. Like, go find yourself 3 to 4 mom friends. Force the friendships. I don't care. Maybe you
Mhm.
don't know each other. Find 3 to 4 of you and, like, just start meeting and talking about what you're learning about yourself and processing and exploring. I think that's the first place you really have to start is
I love that.
what's deep in your soul and find good friends to share it with.
I love that. I always say that sometimes the best medicine happens in the group chat, and
Yeah.
I really do. I feel that in my soul. I think that sometimes friends really do kind of they fill up your cup. That's something that I do
I know.
hold dear.
I have a group chat with some mom friends, and I've been running with one of them for 8.5 years. I've only ever hung out with her outside of running twice. What like, someone asked me the other like, someone asked me about it the other day. I was like, "I don't even know because I only ever run with her." But our group chat, it's so real of being able to text in the morning and be like, "This is what I'm feeling," or I think I really wanna learn to do X, Y, and Z, and having 3 to 4 people rally around you and be like, "Yeah, totally do it," or like, "No, you have no time and space to pick up a violin." Like, no, like, don't do that. Don't disappoint
Bad
yourself.
idea. Yeah.
But it's over those conversations of trust and sharing, like, what is my new identity, and having people that you've invited into that space to be like, "Yes, that does sound like you. You've expressed that in your heart. Go for it," or to be like, "No, that's gonna overwhelm you.
Mhm.
Not wise. Place a pause on that."
Yeah.
So, accountability is huge.
I love that, and I love the way that you said it because I wanna take it like a step further. It's not just about finding those mom friends, but being vulnerable with those mom friends
Mhm.
because I
Yeah,
think a lot of the times it's so easy, especially now in today's day and age, so easy to get lost in the idea of feeling the need to be perfect. And
yeah,
so finding the people that you don't need to be perfect around and like that you could just kind of exactly like you said, text them first thing in the morning and be like, I am losing my mind. Okay. Like I almost chucked a coffee pot at the wall because I am just so, so losing my mind today. And just having your people that you can kind of be honest with, don't feel judged, and have that conversation, but really have the conversation because a lot of people shy away from it. And then it's not really, I think, not as fruitful as
yeah,
as if you were to be very raw and open and honest with some of your mom friends. So I challenge some people
yeah.
to try and,
I don't do surface level well. So
yeah,
anyone in my life knows, like, "Oh, crap, we have to talk to Rofi. We're gonna have to talk." That's the only way I roll.
I love it. So I want to go into a little bit of hard truths before I wrap up the episode with you. So, what's something about postpartum and mental health that people completely misunderstand?
I think they misunderstand how common it is. It's 1 in 5 women. So that is a high percentage. I think that we miss how common it is and how quickly it can escalate. So even if you are worried, well, if it seems like you just need to process a little, like, you might as well jump in with 2 feet and really explore and get the help you need before it gets worse.
Absolutely. I think it's definitely and almost in some ways trivialized because of like the concept of, "Oh, it's just the baby blues. It's expected. You'll be fine. Like just give it some time and with time it'll get better," kind of thing.
Yep, exactly.
So I couldn't agree more. My next question would be, what's something partners or family are doing that may be unintentionally making things harder?
Well, that's a good question. I think patronizing them. So, being
100%.
like, "Oh, you already asked," like, "We already told you the baby's fine," or like, "Oh, why are you asking that again?" Or like, why are you so worried about that?" Well, maybe they're so worried because they have postpartum anxiety and they can't not worry. So don't patronize, ask the next deep question, ask more questions that are digging at the truth versus putting someone down for thinking what they're thinking. That would be
Yeah.
my
I
answer.
totally agree, and I just wanna call to, like, some cultural norms because I come from, like, a very Latin culture, so mental health is something that's almost, like, not real, it's like fable for a lot of
Mm,
us, and so I also wanna say that challenging those cultural norms, like, take it a step further and be the one to step outside of those norms and ask the hard questions even if it's not normal, or be the one to hug, like, I know a lot of people who just don't hug, like, they're just not huggers. And so
yeah.
be the one to go and give
Oxytocin.
them exactly, and
Yeah,
give them a hug,
get some
or
oxytocin,
be the
absolutely.
one to ask, "How are you feeling today?" You know what I mean? Or, "I noticed that you asked that 5 minutes ago and then you asked it today, like, are you okay? Like, is everything okay? Is there something I can do?" Like, just be the one to break that barrier because I think that it will make a difference in someone's life. My next question would be, what's something that you wish every woman knew before having a baby?
That is a really good question. Um, like, this is, like, not mental health related, but what I literally first thought, birth is in your butt, not your vagina, so it's gonna be okay when you feel like your butthole's gonna fall off.
I love
I
that
know
you
that's
said
so
that.
silly, but I wish every woman understood that because it's, like, the number one, like, "I had no idea." So, it's in your
Yeah,
butt, not your vagina, your butthole won't fall off, you'll be fine. That's my very broad
100%.
answer to that question.
No, and the pooping thing, I think is like so many people don't talk about it, and everyone's like, "Oh, she pooped in labor? Oh my god, how dare she?" And it's like, what do you expect? Like there's a bait. He's gonna push it out. He's pushing on that area. So I
Yeah,
love that you said that because it's so true. It is so, so,
yeah,
so true. You feel it there, you do.
you do.
And you feel like you need to poop when he's coming. Because I remember that was a thing for me. I was like, "I need to poop, I need to poop." And she was like, "We need to get you in position,
Your baby.
girlfriend." Yeah. But okay. So I like that one. And so my next question is for any moms who might be listening and realizing certain parts of themselves in the conversations that we've had throughout today's recording, what would be her first step in trying to get some help?
Yeah, so if you live somewhere and you don't know what's available, Postpartum Support International is the best first step resource for women everywhere and birthing people and dads. They have phenomenal resources and they're by state, so you can actually see what's available in your immediate area for help.
Okay, awesome. I'm actually going to include that in the link when I publish the episode so that you
Perfect.
guys can
Yeah.
reference it on the bottom in case anyone needs it. So my next hard truth would be, how can partners actually show up in a way that's helpful and maybe not overwhelming? Times support can be overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, support can definitely be overwhelming. I think knowing boundaries, being able to learn to verbalize those is really important. Kind of like what you were saying of like, what does support look like for me? Even in this conversation, what works for one person might not work for another. So know your boundaries and know what works best for you.
I love that. So my last hard truth would be, what are a few or one small thing that a mom can do daily to support her mental health?
Yeah, 10 minutes of whatever you want to do, whether
I
that's
love
drinking
it.
coffee in silence, if that is going on a 10-minute walk outside, if that is playing Mario Kart on the Switch. I don't care what it is. Just give yourself 10 minutes to do whatever you want without the baby being right there needing you. That would be my number one answer.
I love it. And that's something I think everyone can definitely get on. I think a lot of people try and give like 3-step rules that are impossible to implement in your daily life. You know what I mean? But yeah, I love that it's something so simple, something that you love, and just get into it. Get into it for 10 minutes, baby free, 10 minutes, you time. And I'm sure that it'll be magical. I'm going to start doing it from here on out. I'm going to take that one.
I'm gonna follow up
Yeah.
right.
I'm gonna steal that one, but it's
Yeah,
okay.
I love it.
So I have a couple signature questions that I wrap every episode with just to kind of get to know you a little bit better. And I can tell that you and I are going to be one of those people that I could talk to you for hours. Can't wait to go to Boston. But yeah, so I want to ask you, what is one habit, one daily habit that really makes your life better?
I love the book Atomic
I
Habits.
do
If you
too.
haven't read it, yeah. So my one habit every day is I drink 8 ounces of water first thing in the morning, which is so simple, but it like before I have coffee, before I cook, I have 3 kids, before I make their food, before I let the dog out to pee, I drink my 8 ounces of water and that sets my day.
I love it. I love that book so much. That book
It's such a
actually,
great book.
my God, I love it so much. It really changed the way that I approach my day to day because I didn't realize how much I get lost in the small little things. But then
Yeah.
that book caused me to realize that it is the small little things. It's
Yeah, they
not,
matter. Yeah.
exactly, it's not the big ones. It's the little small things that really kind of calculate your year. Cause I would sit there and I'd be like,
Yeah.
my God, this year flew. But whatever. I love that book, which brings me to my next question. What's one book that changed your life?
Good question. So there's a book by an author called Kim Scott, and it's called Radical Candor. And I would say it changed my life. I read it some years ago working in the business world, and it's just on communication and the difference in being kind and not nice. And that a lot of times we communicate to be nice, but it's not actually kind. And so it's my favorite book and totally changed how I approach relationships, communication, and truth telling.
I've never heard of it. I'm definitely going to read that one because that sounds like something
It's a good
that's,
one.
yeah, that's right up my alley. I like that one. Okay, so my next one would be if people could take away one thing from this conversation, what would you want it to be?
I would say that having a hard time postpartum is normal and it's okay to ask for help, which sounds so cliche, but I
But
think
it
that's what I'd
needs
want
to be
people to take
said.
away. Yeah,
Yeah, it needs to be said. It sounds cliche, but I don't think it's said enough. Funny enough.
exactly. Yeah. You don't have to be at rock bottom to get help.
Yeah. Oh, I love that one. You don't have
So
to be at rock bottom to get help. I think that that definitely needs to be shouted off rooftops. But my next question is what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
yeah. So as a new mom, someone once told me that whatever I decided to do, whether that was working as a mom or being a stay at home mom, to be totally committed and proud of that decision. And I think that has given me so much peace. So, having a corporate career with 3 kids, raising my family and growing my career at the same time, I never had mom guilt because I had such like utmost confidence that it was the right choice for me. So, being told that advice as a young mom with a career, being like, hey, whatever you choose, just do it in boldness and know that it's right just gave me such fuel to go forward positively, where I think a lot of people might have a different experience.
I love that. I love that because definitely I think a lot of people have a different experience and it almost kind of it's almost like you giving yourself permission to do what you know is right for you. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and not apologizing for your decision, and
Exactly.
that was,
Yeah.
like, what the story was around, is like, "Hey, if you're choosing this, then this is your choice, and that's okay, and you don't need to apologize as long as you feel confident in your choice." So,
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So my next question would be what is something that you wish you learned earlier in life?
this is I wish I learned earlier in life that it is okay to be wanted and not needed. So I spent a lot of my life thinking I could only be needed, like, either by friends or by my kids or by family. I didn't think I could ever just be wanted, which I know, like, is so deep, like a whole can of
No, it
worms to
is, but
but that was really something I wish I would have learned sooner, that you can just be wanted. You don't have to make yourself
needed.
needed all the time. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And I think that it's small it seems like small wordplay, but the difference is monumental. The difference is monumental. Even in how you worth like in how you place worth on yourself, I think that that was a really good one. I like that one too. Thank you for that. So my last question would be who's the most influential woman that you look up to, dead or alive, historical or not? It could be your mom, it could be
Yeah,
Harriet
I bet
Tubman.
Harry Tubman is cool.
She's up there.
Such a good question, and I don't think I have a good answer. I feel like there's so many different people I look up to for different reasons. I do love my mom. She's great. I think someone who made an impact is Cheryl Botchelder. She was the CEO of Popeyes. She's a working mom. I think her career and her stance on servant leadership and just how she approached the world is someone who impacted me as a younger mom. She's the one who talked about being confident in your choice,
Mm.
um, of being home or not being home. Her mom and dad raised 4 CEOs. And so her sharing, like, her story and then how she's led as a mom, as a CEO, um, I really take away a lot from her story, so I look up to her. And then, I mean, this is so cliche as someone who's in midwifery school, but I've always really loved Florence Nightingale. She's got a kick-ass
She's
story.
totally,
Like
she's so cool.
she's got a kick-ass story, the
Yeah,
war, the whole thing, like, going against the norm of gender, like, pioneering. So she's someone I think from a young age, like, I would always write research papers on because I
me
just
too.
thought what she did was cool. So
I've written too many papers on Florence Nightingale. I'm a nurse, so for me, that's like
yeah, right, it's the
she's like
thing. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
but
No,
she
I
did a
couldn't agree.
lot.
She did,
So
she's great, and
and a
she pushed a
ton
lot
of
of
pretty
boundaries, which for me is
yes,
big.
exactly. Yeah, so that would be my answer.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It was such a pleasure speaking to you. I had such
Yeah,
great
absolutely.
conversations.